Hi, I'm Harry Rinker, the host of Chats with Harry. My buddy is Greg Watkins from WorthPoint. Greg and I are going to be doing this on a regular basis. We're going to be talking about what's happening in the antiques and collectibles trade. We're going to be doing a bunch of things. Many of you will know me as the former HGTV collector inspector. You can find out a lot about me by going to my website, harryrinker.com. And Greg, glad to have you on board as well.
Well, I'm glad to be here, Harry. It took us quite a bit to figure out exactly how to make this machine work, but we're here now.
Yeah, and let's just kind of take a moment and explain the purposes of Chats with Harry. This is kind of a informal, once a week kind of an event that we're going to do. We're going to talk about developments that are going on in the trade. We're going to talk about some of the things that I see happening out there, maybe some interesting articles I've read or books that I've read. We're also going to invite WorthPoint subscribers to mail in some objects that they may have some questions about. We'll talk about those, do some research work to do that. But mainly we're just going to have fun and try to give some insights. And I want to say, I hate to say tips or whatever, but just let everybody know what's going on out there in the antiques and collectibles trade. You know, there's been a lot of talk in the trade, Greg, over the last couple of weeks about this whole show cancellation business. Navy Pier has now canceled its fall show, and there's a lot of concern at the upper end of the antiques and collectibles market that the show circuit is in some trouble. Actually, it's refining itself. The good news is that the big Philadelphia Antique Show, which canceled in 2015, is going to take place in 2016. But we have some shakeups going on in the trade.
And what do you attribute that to? Is it the large shows with the high-end stuff that is that having the trouble? Because there are places like the Randolph Street Market in Chicago that's doing great, but they're also sort of that mid-level and low-level and repurposed items.
Well, I think that's exactly right. I'm a big fan of the Randolph Street Market in Chicago as well. One of the big issues, as far as I'm concerned, is at the upper end of the circuit, we have an aging dealer base. There's a new organization called the Young Guns Dealers, trying to get young dealers back up on the upscale circuit. But the big urban shows are getting to be extremely expensive, and the high end is getting extremely expensive. And while the old guard, people in their 30s and people in their 50s and 60s and 70s are willing to invest in this high end stuff, what the young people want is very different, and it's a huge changing time out there. One of the things that happened in a letter from the Pier Show director is he said, I can't get dealers to commit in advance. You know, they all want to commit at the last month. They don't want to put their booth rental money up in advance or anything like that. Well, then he doesn't have money to advertise. He's not sure what's going on, and so you have that. But I think the biggest factor is not the increase of price out there. I mean, there will always be buyers at the high end, but it's the aging dealer base that's really a problem. They can't get people to replace the dealers that are either getting too old to come or are not well, or worse yet, dying off.
Well, yeah, and the young kids are they just don't have interest in a lot of things that the older collectors did. I don't know. I think it might have been one of your articles, one of your columns, that said that the young people won't have any interest in anything that has to do with a dining room because they didn't grow up with a dining room.
Well, there's a certain amount of that, Greg, that's going on out there. I think one of the difficulties is that's right. A lot of them don't have memories about it. Second of all, a lot of them are not viewing the standard traditional antiques as investment. Now, I just had a chat with Jerry Lee the other day, one of the big authorities on guns, and we were talking about the firearm market. And you know, every once in a while there is one collecting category that defies everything, and firearms is hot, and hot. And we were talking about that, and he sees a lot of investors coming down into firearms, buying firearms with the idea that they're going to resell them at a future point for more money. Now, you know, we've gone through that in the trade. People invested in early American furniture, and then when that market collapsed, they got nervous. Some people invest in the painting market, and that can be a very fickle market. The painting market has just been hit with a whole series of high-end fakes out of a fellow from Michigan of all places. But Antique Week's been running a number of stories, as is Main Antique Digest, on that type of fraud out there. And when you can't trust what people are selling you, that's a whole other matter. But I think the same thing is, you're right about young people. They want things they can use. Now, antiques and collectibles are fine. A chair is a chair, a dish is a dish, a glass is a glass. And, they should be able to deal with that. But the simple truth of the matter is that it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes they can get so expensive that they're nervous about them. On the other hand, they will go out and buy the modernist look and the antique modernist furniture, and they will sit in it and they will use it. I don't know what it is about it, but they just seem more comfortable. The other thing is that so much of collecting is memory driven. And the old time collectors, the money elite in this country that were collectors, worked with museum curators, they worked with high-end dealers, they worked with some of the major auction houses to create collections. But a lot of those older collectors left them to museums. I mean, the Carolette collection in Boston, the Mellon collections at the Smithsonian, and that type of thing. Today's collectors don't think about leaving whole collections anymore to anybody. I mean, they're always looking at, is it going up in value? What's going on? I wish there was less emphasis on investment, but there just seems to be a lot of it right now. By the way, I want to mention, I went over to see the doctor the other week. I'm always getting yelled at for all of that type of stuff. But when I went over to the doctor, I saw Time magazine, and who should I see on the front cover but Barbie? And I think you've got a picture of the recent Barbie.
I do. If you can hang on a second, we'll show you what you saw.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I was in a state of shock. First of all, I go to the doctor's office assuming all the magazines are going to be, what can we say, anywhere from a month to 6 months old. And so I grabbed this off the shelf and I thought, oh my gosh, February 8th. And so on the way back to the doctor's office, I stopped at a CVS and picked up a copy of it. You know what? You pay for an over-the-counter copy at $6.
Is it really? That's print for you, right?
Well, I'm going to have to say this. Nobody else paid $6, and maybe it'll be a collectible in the long run. But Barbie, the article is fascinating. I don't know if you know what's going on with Barbie, but Barbie's been under a lot of pressure recently in terms of Mattel sales. It started when the Bratz dolls came out, and they heavily impacted the market. And then Mattel bought the American Girl dolls. And American Girl dolls, a lot of young kids, that's what they want. They don't want Barbie anymore. And Barbie took a lot of heat, too, about her body shape and so forth. And a couple of years ago, Mattel did fatten her up a little bit and try to do some things. But, the classic Barbie shape was still there. And so then Mattel lost a key license. They lost a Disney Princess license to Hasbro. And in the last 2 years, Frozen dolls have outsold Barbies. And that's not good. Now, Barbie to Mattel is $1 billion baby. I mean, worldwide sales are $1 billion over, but they're down almost 20% over the last 2 years. And so they're going to try to save Barbie. Now, the problem is that Barbie's 57. I mean, how much cosmetic surgery can you do to a 57-year-old woman and still save her? I mean, really. But the thing, what they're doing is instead of just reshaping and having, they're going to have 4 Barbies now. They're going to have the classic bodied Barbie, which, by the way, is my favorite Barbie, I'll tell you. Back in the early part of this century, they did a couple lingerie Barbies when they were appealing more to collectors than they were to little girls. And so I have a few of those in my collection, and they were not sold when I got rid of my stuff up back in Pennsylvania. But anyway, they're going to have the classic Barbie, although with a slight change. Barbie always wore high heels, and because there's a lot of people wearing flats and other things today, they reticulated Barbie's feet so she could be flat-footed. Boo hiss. But anyway. And so now, however, we're going to have a petite Barbie, a tiny little Barbie. We're going to have a big, tall Barbie, and we're going to have a plump, juicy Barbie. Now, for those of us that grew up with Marilyn Monroe and Gina Lollobrigida and Jane Mansfield and a number of other actresses from the 50s whose proportions were hourglass shaped, to say the least, Plump Barbie is kind of an interesting addition to the line. The problem is the clothes from each of these 4 dolls will not fit the other dolls. If you have a petite Barbie clothes, it won't fit the big one, the standard Barbie. If you have a tall one, the skirt can't get over the plump buttocks of the full-bodied Barbie, or whatever term you want to use for her. And so I think Mattel has just made a huge mistake. I mean, it's almost like the classic Coke thing of the past. And the fact that Mattel lives in a world where they think they can save a 57-year-old toy and maintain the same kind of market share that they've had in the past, I have some really serious doubts about their ability to do that. I mean, you can take a look at some other toys out there that we have in the marketplace. Take G.I. Joe. Now, Barbie came out in '59, the year I graduated from high school, and G.I. Joe came out in '64, a year after I got out of college. But G.I. Joe is around, but he is a lesser toy, a lesser action figure than ever. Hasbro tried multiple times to revive him. They went to, in England, they had Action Man. They had a bunch of other reincarnations of him. He shrunk down during the petroleum crisis, and he came back up to full size again. And I suppose you can still find some G.I. Joe stuff out in the toy stores, but young boys don't play with G.I. Joe anymore. They're all playing video games right now. So, the truth of the matter is G.I. Joe is dead. Now, what Mattel is doing with Barbie is they're just trying to extend life, and collectors are not going to buy into this. I mean, this is a case, it's almost like the old holiday Barbies. When the holiday Barbie craze was in, they had that big craze, and then when the collecting crazes collapsed, holiday Barbie went by the way, and then they had all these Barbies that appealed to collectors, like the Mackie Barbies and all this. Aren't you amazed about how much stuff I know about Barbie, considering I'm a male as opposed to whatever? We won't go there. But anyway, the gist of it all is that then they did some limited edition Barbies, only the collectors found out that even though they announced limited editions, Mattel made as many as they could sell, and that led to what was called the Old Pink Box Revolt in the early part of this 20th century. And now here we come. And here's the situation with Barbie in a nutshell. They're going to create so many different Barbies, 4 different sizes, some 20 different skin tones, all kinds of different hair variations, that no collector is going to collect it anymore because there's too many variations on it. You can't keep up with all the valuations. I mean, the collectors got mad when there were foreign Barbies that weren't available in the United States, when they were selling exclusives in stores and the collectors couldn't keep up with them. And I think Mattel, whether they realize it or not, virtually killed the collecting market on the adult side. Now, it's not true for the ones that the people played with earlier, but they did for the collectors that were buying them for speculative purposes. So now they're back to the kids again. But what they don't realize is the kids are buying American Girl dolls. I mean, if my granddaughter's any example, she could care less about Barbie, but she cares about American Girl dolls because 3 times a year on her birthday and Christmas and whatever else she can use, she hits grandma up for yet another one. And she's got 8 of them, and they're story-oriented and all the rest of that. But then one of the other granddaughters is into the Frozen stuff. So, I mean, I've got to tell you, I think Mattel would be wise to look at the line, reduce it to 1 doll, and be done with it. Theoretically, Barbie was all supposed to be such a good, hot thing because it was inexpensive, $10, 25 up to $25, sometimes $30. But the truth of the matter is, American Girl dolls are $100 a pop, and they're selling really well. So Mattel has got itself a real problem. It's a very fascinating article in there. In a way, it's sad because there was one point in Barbie's career when Barbie was a professional. I mean, there was a time when Mattel said, we're going to turn Barbie into a whole series of professions, over 100 different professions. Right? I mean, Barbie was an astronaut. Barbie was a congresswoman or whatever she was. That was a wonderful part of Barbie. But right now, the feminists are saying these new Barbies are not even empowering to young ladies anymore. And so, well, I'm afraid it's all over. So I'm going to recommend, it's a great article about the whole issue of collecting longevity and everything else. Try the February 8th, 2016 edition of Time Magazine. It's just a really great piece.
Well, it sounds like it's interesting, and the deal about the collecting and whether Mattel is looking for current kids to pick up the Barbie. And I also think that in addition to the different body sizes, they've got different skin tones and eye shapes and eye colors and hair colors that will allow somebody to make a doll that reflects them or their experience.
Well,
and
that's true. That's true, Greg. But the problem is that the minute you get into this thing, and that's true for American Girl doll too, how does the collector deal with that? There's so many variations out there that there's no way to collect them intelligently. I mean, this is what happened with Pogs. It's what happened with phone cards. The minute the variation count goes up, and it's true even to some degree for Hot Wheels and Matchbox toys, the more the variation count goes up, the harder and harder it is to create really sensible collections out there. And people say, well, today collecting is very specialized and collectors don't want to own one of everything. That's a lie. Collectors want to own everything and one of everything. No, they really do. And, you know, I just think it's there. The other thing, too, is that the doll market is in an interesting situation at the moment, really an interesting situation at the moment, because the old doll market, the old late 19th, early 20th century doll market that was the real high end of it is in collapse. Again, the United Federation of Doll Collectors had this prejudice for pre-1920 stuff and then eventually pre-45 stuff, didn't want any of the people that collected dolls from the 50s and 60s. Now they're a little bit more open, but they never attracted the younger ladies and the younger women into the clubs. And so right now, I mean, the secondary doll market is losing money at the top hand, left and right. I mean, there are a few that still do well, but not anywhere near as much. But this thing about things will go on forever. That was really when I came into the trade in the 60s and 70s. That was a belief. When I started collecting dark blue historical scene china, historical Staffordshire they call it. You know, I was told by the dealers, buy it now, Harry. When you're ready to retire, when you're 60 or 70, buy this stuff will be worth a lot of money. Well, if I could get out what I have in some of the pieces at this point, I'll be there. But what happens is that we now understand better, or not, certainly I understand better because I write a lot about it. I understand better that really what you have to do is that you have to have a realistic view of what the longevity of any collecting category is. And no collecting category is guaranteed to go on forever no matter what. Or at least not the big categories as a category itself. But by the way, we have an object we want to talk about today too, which I thought would be some fun. Right. Again, we're going to invite WorthPoint subscribers to email you, right, with some pictures of objects and questions and so forth, and then we'll select some that we like and talk about them and fool with them on the air. But I chose one, an object that I was queried about by somebody, and it's a baseball, and it's always fun to see autographed baseball. So, okay, a client sent me a letter and said, we've got this baseball in the family. It's from the 1950s. My relative in the family was injured, and he was a big Detroit Tigers fan. And he went to the Tigers, or somebody went to Tigers and said, "Boy, this ball would really help him get better." And so, boom, they sent it. So she sends me this picture. Well, let's go back to the first picture there that had Billy Martin's and Al Kaline signature on there. Well, guess what? Billy Martin and Al didn't manage the Detroit Tigers in the 50s. He managed them from 1970 to 72. And that was the last years that Al Kaline played. But if you look at the next picture, there's another signature on there of, I think it's a Timmerman or one of the other players up there. Let's go to that other picture we had up there a second ago.
This one?
No, the next one. I know. Oh no, we didn't get that. But anyway, I did some. Oh, there it is. See,
There it is.
Bob Timmerman? He played in the '70s too, and it turns out that this is a 1971 or '72 Detroit team ball. Now, now that we've identified the year the ball is from, and this is where you have to do a lot of research work. There are many types of signed balls. One is called the Clubhouse Ball, and that's where somebody in the clubhouse takes a pen and signs everybody's name to it. Now, when that happens, the usual clue is everything signed with one pen, and the other clue is that all the slopes of the signature are one way. I mean, no matter how much the guy tries to alter it, the signatures are there. Now, here you could see on this one a couple of really good things. First of all, a multiplicity of pens were used. And the other thing is that the slopes don't all agree with each other. The one on the top there has a very distinct southwest slope. The one in the next one down is nowhere near as distinct. Timmerman's is almost even across the ball. Phil Reese, Rich or whoever that is, Reese, his signature is all over there. Now go back to the first one with Billy Martin and the other one on there. Every once in a while, in a clubhouse situation, they'll have a box of balls for the guys to sign, and one or two of the big players or others will sign them in what's called the sweet spot of the ball. This is called the sweet spot, the piece opposite the logo, and here you've got two Hall of Famers in the sweet spot. Now, what do we have? Now, I'm not a signature authenticator, but if I was a guesser, and I've been known to do it, I think this is a good 1971, 72 signed team ball by the players themselves. Now, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories. A person came into one of my appraisal clinics with a baseball signed by Babe Ruth, and I said, "Tell me the story of how you acquired this." And he said, "Well, my uncle was in the stands at Yankee Stadium when the Babe hit a home run out of the park. And he caught the ball and into the bleachers. He caught the ball, and after the game was over, he went down and to the locker room and saw the Babe, and I saw the locker room attendant and said, 'This is the ball Babe hit out of the park today. You know, I'd like him to sign it.' No problem." Now, Babe Ruth was very generous with his signature, unlike some other players. So he took the ball, goes in there, it comes back, and out it comes, signed by Babe Ruth in the sweet spot. Now, I'm not, again, an authenticator necessarily this stuff, but I've seen enough good Babe Ruth signatures to know a bad one, and this one stank. Apparently, the guy couldn't get a hold of Babe, and he just signed the ball. So I had to tell these people, look, it's not worth anything at all. Well, into my life walks another Babe Ruth baseball, and I said to the owner, I said, "How did you get this?" "Well," he said, "Babe, loved to play golf." I said, "You bet." He said, "One time he drove down from New York to Allentown, Pennsylvania, play golf with my dad, and I caddied for the Babe," he said. "And when we got to the 18th hole and we were finished, the Babe reached into his bag and pulled out a ball and signed it." And I said, "How do I know that story's true? I mean, okay, I know you're not a liar." I told the guy, I said, "But how do I know? What proof do you have other than your own story?" He said, "Would you like to see a picture of my dad and Babe and me on the 18th green?" I said, "Yes, I would." He says, "Here it is." I said, "Good signature." So let's just, now, obviously the person that has this ball can send it out and have it authenticated. They're authenticating services, but they're expensive. And when you look on the internet, by gosh, there's a list of many internet sites where you can look up. We can go to WorthPoint.com and look at the value of signed baseballs too, as a matter of fact. But the point is that I found a page with signed Tiger balls for all the Tiger teams, and they list this ball $150 to $250. Now, I got to tell you right now, I don't know who's making up that page, but he wants to buy balls, because you have to be really careful information you find on the screen. Come on, you're a Tiger fan. It's got Al Kaline on it. It's got Billy Martin as manager. Okay, now maybe Billy Martin doesn't mean anything to the Tiger fan, but Al Kaline sure as heck does. And if that ball is in Detroit, which is near where it is, I got to tell you, $300 you can put it on eBay and it'll disappear in a day at that kind of price. I think that ball's worth a lot more in the hometown. And that's the big problem with sports memorabilia. It's got to have a team attractiveness to it. Now, as Paul Harvey would say, now for the rest of the story, Greg. So I called this client up and I said, you know, I did all this research on this ball. And I said, this isn't from the 1950s. It's from the 1970s. And so guess what happened? She turns around and I could hear her say in the background, we took the wrong ball out of the china cabinet. Let's get the other one. I have no idea who's on that, but I've asked her to send some pictures. But you know, this goes to show when you're dealing with an object, all the amount of time and research you have to put into it. There really are two key steps on working with any object. What is it and how much is it worth? Now, you know, I talked a lot about the authenticating process for this ball. And again, I'm reasonably convinced it's right, but I think I'd still want some signature expert sports signatures. The problem with sports signatures, as you know, is the FBI says 80 to 85% of them out there are fake. So provenance and good logic are very critical to this one. But you know, value is an interesting thing. We can put a plug in for WorthPoint here because WorthPoint is now rapidly becoming the online price guide for anybody who wants information. I'm using it more and more myself. You know, again, to compare prices when you use it, you certainly want to look at the date, who the potential seller was. But I'll tell you where WorthPoint is really valuable, and that is that when you see these buy it now prices being asked for on eBay and some of these other sites, maybe you ought to go to WorthPoint and find what things sold through for. Because you stress the sell through prices, not the buy it now prices.
Right. Yeah, and we continue to add infusions of this data every couple of weeks, and when we do, it's 2 million or more pieces of sales data. And a few weeks ago, we had 750,000 baseball card uploads. So we continue to get that data, and if you're looking for the Johnny Bench rookie card and you want to compare the different grades in it, you can see what that card sold for in 2006 and 2010 and 2015. So that you're right, WorthPoint is a good place to look for these values.
Yeah, we're coming to the end of this week's chat. I want to remind people, too, to go to my website, www.harryrinker.com. There's a lot of good information up there. First of all, you can read my weekly column, Rinker on Collectibles, but you can also read it on WorthPoint.com, too. You have to hunt a little bit to find it, but we're going to get that fixed so it'll be a little bit easier for you to find. Do a Q&A one week and a text column the other week. The other thing is you'll see information up there from my Institute for the Study of Antiques and Collectibles. We have in April of 2016, we have the Midwest Jewelry Seminar. It's a 2-day seminar on understanding jewelry and introduction. If you want to collect jewelry, we're going to take you from the Georgian period to modern times and show you all the insider tips and clues that you need to do that. And then the next 2-day course that will follow immediately after that one is one on Georgian, Victorian, and Edwardian jewelry, done really more for the collector than anybody else. But the Institute is now completely object focused. Of course, we can also mention that over time, hopefully within another year or so, we're going to be offering some of these courses online through WorthPoint as well. So there's a lot of information up at harryrinker.com.
And I can attest that Harry's Institute classes are amazing. I took the summer course, the summer camp last year, 3 different courses over 6 days, and it was amazing in the amount of detail that you can learn about a subject in a couple of days in one class.
Right, and we have 2016 Antiques and Collectibles Summer Camp information up there now. We're doing it as a result of last year's classes, some reaction from some of the people who took it. We're doing a big 2-day course on researching antiques and collectibles and all the skills you need to research an object. If you just, all you have is the object, don't know anything much more beyond that. We're doing a great course on paintings, prints, and watercolors. Something a lot of people encounter in their line of work. And finally, we're doing toys, games, and puzzles, which we could just spend the whole course putting puzzles together. But no, we'll learn a lot too. Well, we are coming to the end of this week's chat. I'm looking forward to doing another one in the weeks ahead. We'll be talking again about a whole bunch of stuff, articles I read, trends we see going on in the trade, and also want to encourage our WorthPoint subscribers to send in some emails with objects that we can take a look at here on the show.
That's right. So if you have an object you'd like Harry to look at, you can send an email to community@worthpoint.com along with some photographs of the image, and we will pick one, possibly two, depending on what Harry's got to talk about that week, and we'll give it a deep look.
Well, and also when they do that, let's have as much information as possible: size, markings, family provenance, all that's helpful. All right. Well, have a great week, everybody. Greg, you do as well, and we'll do this again soon.
All right. We certainly will. All right, Harry. Have a good evening, or afternoon, I guess it is, right?
Yep.
Okay. We'll get this going here.